Hello there. This is Dan Roodt on the Free West Media YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Click on the subscription button in the lower right hand corner and on the bell in order to get notifications of our new videos coming onto the channel. Now today I want to talk a little bit about a very topical subject, that of statues. Today or yesterday, the University of Oxford in the UK announced that it was removing the statue of Cecil John Rhodes, the famous British South African entrepreneur and colonialist who also colonized the country north of South Africa, and which became known as Rhodesia, and the name of which was changed in 1980 to something called Zimbabwe. Now, all over the Western world, in lots of countries, statues are being attacked, and there's clamoring for those statues to be removed, including in Sweden. Sweden doesn't really have a history of colonialism or anything like that. It's not entirely a very racist country either. On the contrary, Sweden has funded all kinds of anti-racist, anti-colonialist and even terrorist movements around the world over the last few decades. Including in South Africa, they funded some bombs in our cities and on our sidewalks and so on. But there's a woman called Lovette Jallow. She's judging from the photographs, she's a person of color or an African of African descent. I think she comes from Gambia. She was born in Gambia, and she's telling the Swedes that they should remove the statues of Carl von Linné, otherwise known as Linnaeus, the father of the biological classifications that we currently use in genus, species, and so on. And because she says Carl von Linné was the father of racism. He distinguished between human beings on the basis of skin color, hair texture, and so on. And in Britain, of course, we know that other statues have been toppled and thrown into the harbor. In France, there are also calls for statues to be removed of all kinds of people. Although 71% of Frenchmen, according to a poll that was published, an official poll by Ipsos, company Ipsos, polling company, 71% of French people are opposed to both the removal of statues and the changing of names, even when people, those historical figures, are found to having been either slave owners or racists or both. So the French public is not prepared to countenance the removal of statues. But as we know, in these circumstances, usually the views of the public are not taken into account, and some or other person, an academic or a journalist or a politician, a member of the elite, they will take the decision on your behalf, and they will take away your statue, and they will change your name, or they will attack yours, or the statue will be attacked and the police will not do anything to stop the attack or to restore the statue after it had been damaged. In the Netherlands, the same kind of pressure. In the United States, lots of statues have been attacked, have been removed. Currently, these statues are related to the Confederacy, but we know it's not going to stop at the Confederate statues. All of the statues in the USA, all the statues of people from the past, from history. Even George Washington, he is reputed to have been a slave owner, so he is one of the founders of the American Republic, and these anti-statue people, they want Washington's statue to be removed as well. In South Africa, of course, we've had the most extreme kinds of attacks on statues. You know, they've been tossed, you know, they've been tossed with buckets of excrement. They've been painted, they've been burnt, they've been attacked with hammers and saws, you know, and of course a lot of them have actually been removed or yes, been displaced from various spots where these statues used to be. Most recently, Paul Kruger's statue in Pretoria, a very famous statue by a famous South African artist or Afrikaner artist, Anton van Bou, was again attacked by means of paint, red paint, and it is now currently being cleaned. But ultimately all of these statues will be, or as in London, will have to be put into cages, or protective measures will have to be taken to safeguard the statues from iconoclastic vandalism. But what are we looking at here? We are really seeing that these people attacking the statues, of course, they are so-called people of color, or African Americans, or Africans, sometimes Arabs, but it's mostly people from the African continent, or whose ancestors have come from the African continent. And to some extent in the media and elsewhere in academia and among members of the elite, people from Africa have become a special kind of human being. They have been endowed with certain divine characteristics. I don't know why, whether it is because a lot of them seem to play soccer well, or football as it is called in the United Kingdom and elsewhere. The French football team has a lot of Africans in it, people of African descent, and when you look at the Olympic Games, normally in the 100 meters and the 200 meter sprinting events, there are mostly Africans or people of African descent. And perhaps because of that reason, a certain number of people in the West, Europeans and so on, have come to look upon them as to some extent being very special, or even endowed with divine qualities. So you are not allowed to blaspheme against them. There are laws in South Africa especially, but also in the United States and elsewhere, in France and Britain, that if you blaspheme against these very special humans, then you can be sent to prison. You can be imprisoned. When one talks about blasphemy in the classical sense, you know, blasphemy against God or Christ, or that no longer really exists. You can say what you like about the Christian God. You can say that Jesus was gay, or his mother was a prostitute, or whatever. You can say what you like, and that is freedom of speech. But when it comes to people of color, you no longer have that freedom of speech. Then you have to abide by the new blasphemy laws and rules. So where does this all lead? In a sense, these people attacking the statues. They want to overturn 500 years of history. They want to overturn the European and Western dominance since the Renaissance, since the 1400s. And they want to put the Europeans into their place. They want to lord it over them and dictate to them what kind of statues they may have and not have. Even though these are minorities in most Western countries. In South Africa, of course, there's a majority of people like that. And here it's even more terrible than anywhere else. Our entire history has been more or less effaced. There are no, and our art, even not only our statues, but even our paintings and works of art, very valuable paintings that will fetch millions on auction anywhere in the world, they are no longer allowed to be exposed or exhibited in the art galleries or the art museums because they give offense. That they're just a normal, it might be just a normal landscape painting or a painting of a white person or a white lady, a white man, but they give offense because they portray the hated ethnicity of the European. But where does it all lead? Eventually, some people have said after the statues, they go for the people, which is also true. More and more, there is violence directed against European peoples worldwide, especially in South Africa, where we've seen so many atrocities over the last 20, 30 years. Horrible murders, massacres, farm murders, and the like. Things about which the mainstream media don't really report, but that we experience very painfully in our own country. And there's a sense of despair as to how is this going to be stopped and where is it going to lead to. But essentially these people want to replace the entire Western culture. They want to do away with it in its entirety. They are even saying that Western science is racist and they must come up with a new science. They will come up with a new science. There have been articles in scientific journals such as Nature where certain scientists are stating that yes, science is racist and that we need to formulate a new science, an Afrocentric science. So things are going to change, and after the statues they might look at the paintings, and some kind of clamor might arise in the world, stating that Leonardo da Vinci or Rembrandt or Manet, all of these Western painters were either racists or the subjects of their paintings give offense. For example, Manet, in his famous painting Olympia, there's a naked white lady, European lady in the painting, but there is also a black woman in the role of a servant, and we know that that is not permissible, even though there are many, still here in South Africa, probably about 1 million black women working as servants for other people, richer people. One is not allowed to portray any person of African descent in a subservient role. So that aspect of reality may not be represented in a painting. So Manet's Olympia will go out the window quite soon. There will be calls for it not to be exhibited anymore in the Orsay Museum in Paris, and so on and so forth. It will lead to a complete replacement of Western art, and ultimately the museums and the galleries will be filled with a revolutionary new art from Africa primarily, or from African Americans or Afro-Europeans. And that art might not be of a very high standard, and it may not conform to what we thought were our aesthetic standards in the past, although of course in a lot of modern art, the whole gist of it is to produce anti-art. So there is already the anti-art in the world, which, coupled with this sense of ethnic and racial injustice, will lead to a situation where all the art and all the statues, all the paintings in the world will be replaced by others. There will be, well, we've seen it here in South Africa, where they've taken out our paintings out of the museums and they've replaced them with clay pots and beadwork and handicrafts and crude kind of wooden objects. And that is the future awaiting us if this iconoclastic movement in the Western countries, driven by minorities, by especially African minorities, if that is allowed to simply continued unabated and unfettered and tolerated by the members of the elite in the Western world, who no longer care for Western culture or even for people of European descent. That in a nutshell is how I see it. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and we'll have some interesting interviews and commentary to come quite soon.